And how do you make it useful? Can it be scaled? Can it be real? So if not, he'll have to go to the next step. Next step is the gap, right? That is not filled, right? So in fact, like the next session is going to be on starting from research gap. How do you properly formulate research questions? So questions that uh, we will be answering in our research. I mean, whoever is doing the research.
Now, if you ask an AI, the problem that I was trying to solve, automated driving for trucks, if you ask any AI, they will say it's possible to create something like that in Sri Lanka. But we know the Sri Lankan condition, the roads and all that. So it may not be able to make a human judgment. It's very positive. It will say, you can do that. Go ahead with that research.
Kapila,
But
good
if they...
evening. Good evening.
Prajnavan is also here. Good evening, Nuance, as well.
Good evening, Kapila.
So, yeah, we have only a few minutes more and we already have some audience, right? Nice. Exciting to see you all. I'm after like a very hectic day, but this is an exciting topic anyways. So I think actually, Roshan sir, when we were initiating this idea, this was the keystone session people requested, right? How to do literature review.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll start sharp on 8 o'clock, but again we have 2-3 more minutes. So shall I start then?
Yeah, you are the host.
Right. Okay. So, good evening, everybody. So, welcome you all for the third exciting session about AI in research. Yeah, as we discussed, this is the third session, and this is actually on the use of AI for literature review. Again, as usual, we have our host panelist, Professor Roshan Ragil, professor at the Department of Computer Engineering, University of Peradeniya, and also the CEO, Lanka Research and Education Network. And we warmly welcome Professor Nuan Kodagoda. He's actually holding a PhD from in computer engineering from Sheffield Hallam University, UK. And he's actually the current Pro Vice Chancellor of Computing and Professor of Computing at the Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, or SLIT. So again, we actually discussed something about research ideation, and we even had an overview to this 10-session series some time ago. And today we all are going to tune into how to use AI effectively for literature review. Without further ado, I would transfer the podium to Professor Roshan Ragil, our host, as always. Roshan sir, over to you.
Thank you, Kapila. And I know that you have a lot of other things, and thank you for being here on time and starting this. And we are having a bad weather here. So same I hear from in Colombo,
Same here. Yes.
Colombo as well. So hopefully we can go through this, and even in case if we just get dropped or something, we'll come back. Don't worry, we have backup plans. So we'll get through this. Okay, so that said, let's start. And like Kapila said, the idea of this series is not just AI in research, but research itself in the age of AI. So how do we do research in the AI era? That's how we titled it, the series. And this is the third episode. First one, we just introduced the idea, and then we had already a session on the starting of research, and now we are at the crucial point of literature review. And uh, like Kapila said, there's a lot of interest and demand for the literature review. And even in the last episode, we just mentioned that there are plenty of tools that are built around literature review. So there's a lot to discuss and a lot to take home from today's discussion. And particularly, we also want to know from experts like Nuan here. In fact, like I just quickly invited Nuan for this topic because we have done similar session even a couple of years ago. We have been doing a number of sessions, me and him together, him and I together. We have been running similar sessions. So I thought like, okay, why not? This is the right combination to converse on this topic. So the topic is literature review in the age of AI. So there might be questions in a lot of people's mind. Usually we take, if you want to do, let's say, at least in Sri Lankan context, a PG research degree, we give about, usually our papers say we give about 3 months to do a literature review, right? So nowadays, the students are asking me questions like, can I give it to a tool and get it done in 3 minutes or 2 minutes and 1 minute and so on? So we'll hopefully unpack the answers to these questions. Can we really do literature review that fast? Now that there are these tools and technique and AI is in place, right? So like I said, this is one of those important aspects of research. And what we had to unpack are things like, do we normally consider literature review as just summarizing, as a summarizing exercise, or is there is more to do with it? So if it is just a summarizing summarizing exercise, actually, we have been building AI tools for a long time, not just in the recent past, but even earlier. For about 15, 20 years, we have been building summarizing tools, and summarizing AI tools, in fact, can do really well. But literature review, is it just only about summarizing? The answer we will unpack today is not just summarizing, it's a lot more than summarizing. Obviously, it's about reading, summarizing, and also one important aspect which we will spend more time discussing is about synthesizing research. So we'll discuss this synthesizing aspect, I would say the most important aspect of literature review with Nuan's input and our discussion. And obviously, the last part of a literature review is to identify research gap. And how do we take that research gap and going forward is a discussion for the next episode. But for now, we'll stop at research gaps. So how do we identify research gaps is the last item we'll discuss for today. So for this discussion, like I said, I'm very pleased to have Prof. Nuwan Kodagoda. And thank you very much, Nuwan. Just when I asked, said yes in the first go and joining this evening to have this discussion with us. So let us, I hope you know the format to some extent, Nuwan. So the idea is I'll pose few questions and you're going to give answers, and we'll discuss, keep it casual. Yeah, we are dressed casual, so at least that looks the ambient, that sets the ambient good. And then and also Nuwan will take time to time show something, show and tell. Okay, so this is how some of these things can happen. That will help the researchers who are joining to take this forward. So let me ask let me start with the very first question to Nuwan. So when you talk about literature review, what is the real purpose of literature review in a research project? How do and also, do you think like students understand it properly, or do you think there are any misunderstanding? I'm just setting this stage before we go into AI and research and all, like literature review and all that together. So the question is literature review. What's the real purpose? The students, do they understand it properly? Are there any misunderstanding that could come in? We'll start from there. General literature review. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prashant, for having me, and also Kapila. So it's great to be here. And thank you so much for inviting me. So I think that's a very important question about why we do a literature review. I would say sometimes students, when I talk to them, they do have a misunderstanding, that thinking that a literature review is something that it's a one-off task that they have to do before they start the research project, and then then it's done and dusted, and that's it. So actually, this literature review is something that has to go through the entire research cycle. I believe you can think of it like that. Um, so let me put it this way. I think in the last session, you may have talked about research. I mean, some kind of a idea, research project idea that you want to do. So students actually, I mean, maybe the supervisor gives them a topic, or they are interested in some topic, and that's where some kind of an interest starts. So I will try to take an example. I mean, these days, of course, everyone is talking about autonomous cars, and maybe it'll never come to Sri Lanka, but why not? Maybe we can think maybe we can think that someone has a crazy idea that we want to create something like, not really an autonomous car, or something like a driver assist kind of system, maybe for a container truck, right? Let's take that as a project idea. So that's a very good idea. Like, it could be an interesting idea, or it could be any other idea someone has. Of course, one way of going and starting a project, of course, is to ask a very senior professor, okay, is this something doable or not? But anyway, usually what a professor might say is, why don't you look at the literature? So initially, the literature is there, the literature search is there to identify what is out there. Like, if you want to create some kind of a driver assist system for let's say, some container truck, you got to see whether someone has done that. And if that problem has been properly solved, then of course, then it doesn't become a research project anyway. But there might be some aspects where you can look at other things. So I think that is the first thing. Like, you when you have an idea, just to check and see what is out there, what have others done, and also to get a sense of how they have done it. So maybe someone is looking at this project from a computing point of view, and maybe they are familiar with vision-based systems, like maybe some kind of like deep learning kind of solution that you can use for image identification. Maybe that is what they are thinking. But when they look at the literature, they will find out whether this is there, or what are the techniques that are used. So in addition to the project idea, you kind of learn what is out there. Like, are they using CNNs? Like, is it just image classification, or is it image segmentation techniques that they have to use? Whether they have to use LiDAR, what are the technologies that are typically used in this? So they have to learn about the language that is used by this research community who are solving similar kind of problems. And when they go through the literature, so they might say, okay, for cars, well, you have the Google systems, the Waymo, and maybe Tesla, and some of the other things that are there. So there is some kind of solution. Maybe for trucks also, maybe there are some other solutions that are out there. But then maybe you might be able to see a gap. Certainly in Sri Lanka, we don't have any autonomous or any kind of vehicle like that. There are a lot of other challenges to look at those kinds of systems in Sri Lanka. So maybe you can kind of identify some kind of gap by reading or going through the literature. And one of the other things that you kind of recognize is like, especially if you are in a very specific area, you learn to know about what are the data sets that are used. Like, for example, if you want to have something like a driver assistance system, there are standard data sets that people use for developing this. Or if it's an image recognition system, what is out there? What are the evaluations? How does someone evaluate something like that? So basically, to get a whole kind of idea about initially whether this problem has been solved, whether it's an interesting problem. Secondly, to learn about the various terms, the technologies that people typically use in this area. And maybe by going through several papers, you might see, okay, maybe this is something that others have not thought about. That can be an interesting project that is out there. And then, of course, to find out whether you need to have data sets or whether you are using machine learning models, what kind of techniques have been used in the past. So to get a sense of all of these things, at least at the discovery part or the initial part of the research project, you need to do a literature review.
Okay, yeah. So that's a lot to have covered the whole aspect and how it can be done. But let me just to break it down and ask a little more detailed questions. For example, so literature review, is it just about finding and collecting all these research paper that are out there? So you took this example of the self-driving truck. So is it just about, okay, let me go and search and find. Now I can ask an AI tool maybe to find all this. And is it just about listing all these papers, collecting these papers together, or just collecting and summarizing papers? Is it just that, or is it more?
Yeah, that's also a very good question, Roshan. So I think, first of all, you have to start somewhere. So you need to use some kind of system, but it's a traditional system to find a few papers. And in the good old days, finding research papers that actually tie up properly with the problem that you're going to solve was very hard. And as you know, there are so many tools that are out there. And what I think this is something that we will talk about. So finding papers is part of the problem. But then that alone is not enough. So let's say once you have found a set of papers, you will find there are certain fundamental topics or common topics that are covered across these papers, maybe certain techniques that are there. So for those kinds of things, you will probably at the end, I think you also asking about whether we can do a research in a couple of weeks instead of 3 months. I would argue you need to take the time. Because ultimately, when we are doing research, it's you who is doing it. It's not AI who is doing it. So your brain has to learn whatever things that you have to do, the techniques, the approach of doing research, the methodologies that you are supposed to use. All those things have to go into your brain. Otherwise, it's not you who is doing the research. So, I mean, currently, we expect you as students or maybe as researchers to do the research work. So first of all, obviously, as Roshan mentioned, you have to find a list of papers, but then you need to go through them and you need to kind of understand what is out there, what is the common terms that are used, and then go into the topic and see whether what you are looking for is available or how do you get there.
Yeah, so I know you have been working with a lot of students and research students and so on, even bachelor's and also at the postgraduate level. When you are working with them, when they say they do literature review and their engagement with a more of a personal experience, I wanted to ask you, where do they start and when do you feel like, okay, now, okay, it looks like they got it. Okay, they got that, now they know what research literature review means. So this might help a lot of students who are joining, I believe.
Yeah, I think these days students are sometimes more savvy than us when they use these tools, and sometimes we learn from them. So typically, when a student approaches us these days, they do have a very sophisticated document or a proposal. But then what I think everyone does, and including me, does is you ask questions. What is this that you have presented? What is this part that you have given in this document? I think that question and answer kind of thing is important, and they may not be able to answer you immediately. They'll have to go back, do some homework, and come back. And you need to have a few iterations. And through that iteration, if once you're experienced supervisor, you get the students to dig a little bit deeper into the area that they want to get. So you might say, okay, why don't you look at that paper? How is this done in another way? And they have to go back, and it's this iteration. And then sometimes you get a student who have a very nice proposal, but they don't come back to you because they think it's a hassle going back and then figuring this out. So that's also a good way to find out, okay, whether this student is worthwhile your time.
So in short, can we also say something like, okay, so they have looked at the research papers and read it, understood, synthesized, or figured out what's going on, and identify, like you said, if they already have a research gap or a problem justified and coming, then she looks like, okay, so it looks like this is good, right? So, but yeah, so that's I think that sets a good foundation where we wanted to start this discussion on and how we can use tools and so on. So the before we go into tools, in literature review, can you also like sort of differentiate between what are like sort of good literature review, what are, so maybe even you have been reviewing papers where like literature review are presented. What do you see is it as like a good literature review and also something as like a weak literature review, we would say. This again, I think will help students to.
Yeah. So if I give you an example of what I consider to be a weak literature review is you take papers, let's say you have 10 papers that you have considered as part of your literature review, and then you summarize those 10 papers individually. Like you say paper 1, this is what the author has said. Paper 2, this is what the author has said. Paper 3, this is what the author has said. You are not looking at comparing the 10 research papers, or you're not comparing any of them. You're not saying paper 1 has done a better job than paper 2, or paper 3 has an interesting way of looking at this problem. So if you're not saying that, I think that's a weak literature review. So for example, I can give you an example. Those days, one of the earliest vision-based data sets was the MNES data set, like the digital number data set. So if someone actually goes to literature, maybe a little bit, maybe in the 20s or maybe 2016 or 17, you might find a paper saying that this MNES dataset can be solved using a CNN, let's say with a 99.2% accuracy or something. And someone else says that they have used a different model, transformer, but they are achieving a little bit higher, like 99.4% accuracy for the MNES dataset. Another one is using maybe some kind of a hybrid model, and they have also achieved over 99% accuracy. And that's what the student is reporting. So basically, if you are able to achieve 99.2 or 9, something above that range, it means the data set is too small now. You have to look at a different data set. So I would say a strong, someone who would do it properly might say, okay, MNES data set has been looked at these research papers, but then all of them have achieved over 99% accuracy. So probably they have to look at a different data set, which is more challenging for the algorithms. So I think comparing the different papers and then trying to highlight what makes one different from another or one weaker from the other, it would be the way that one would expect a person to, review the papers rather than looking at the papers in isolation. Of course, when you start off, you will look at the papers in isolation, summarizing it. But then later on, you should be able to compare what's happening in each of these different papers.
I think like just to summarize, so one, I think you have given a very like you actually talked about multiple things here. So the first thing, yes, the research. If you're just summarizing each papers, and now the tools even can do it. You give a paper, take a summary, make a table. Okay, this paper, this is what it's doing. This paper, this is what it's doing. We'll consider that as a weak literature review. And if you want to be stronger, the very first step, what you said was, we will have to compare and contrast. Like we'll have to figure out, okay, this paper is doing this paper is doing this is how it's different from this paper. All these comparisons within the paper that you are seeing is the next step, what you're talking about. Okay, sort of critically looking at them and comparing and contrasting. But then you also went one step further. I don't know whether the students who are listening noticed it, is that these papers are all doing all these good things, but are they doing it enough? Or are there anything missing there? Like, okay, it could be like in your example, the data set itself. Okay, it's a smaller data set. We have trained a model, like a multiple models, and it works. But will it work in real life? Will it expand? Will it scale? So that's the next one more step further, right? So you have nicely highlighted, like, okay, this is like a mediocre work, and then okay, this is the first step, and then you have to go beyond. If you want to do your own research, it's not just about even comparing, but also looking beyond and finding a gap, right? So that's like perfect. I think like that adds a lot of value to it. So with that you're also saying it's more on the depth, right? So yes, like you said, we are starting with the breadth, but we are also going in the deep so that we can really figure out what's going on, right? So that's that makes a lot of sense. And with that, let me just move on to the most weighted moment. Is about the tools, right? So let's talk a bit about these tools and whether they can do it. I mean, you and me, when I think we were doing research, we had no tools actually.
Absolutely.
We didn't have, I mean, like when I talk to my students or even my PG students, those who completed their bachelor's degree before generative AI era and so on, summarizing, when I say, okay, so like when we were doing research, we didn't have even Google Scholar or Scopus database. They were sort of surprised. Is it like, how do you do research? Right. So we are now, I think, in an age and time where if you don't know an AI tool, we'll think, okay, how would you do a literature review? How would you do research? But is it really the case? Like, if you take AI tools, where do you think they can genuinely support a literature review? That's like a very open question, and I think that you're going to give a lot of answers. Take your time, spend some time. Even you can show some examples if you can, and let me give you some time to answer that question. So AI tools and literature review, useful ways.
Yes, thanks, Rojan. I remember like when I was doing my PhD, there was one particular paper that I wanted, and I had to wait for 1.5 months. I went to the library and said, I want this paper because my supervisor said that's a key paper. I had to wait for 1.5 months till the librarian got me the paper down. Yeah, it was a bit tough. So I think one of the major things that I think people have figured out that AI is really good at is discovering the right papers for the question that you have or what you are searching for. So AI has really helped in that kind of way. It has gone beyond the traditional digital searches that we had. So before this, we had digital like IEEE Explorer and various other things, but it has really gone much more than that. And I think another strong area that we all advocate AI to be used for is understanding the content of a research paper. Because everything is, if it's printed, is good and done, but then you need to understand and put that thing inside your brain, because then you can go forward. For that, AI has a lot of support. I just want to share my screen, and then I just want to show a few things. Let me see if I can share the screen.
Sharing is enabled, sir.
Right, okay. Just give me a second. So I have, let me just share my screen.
It started. Okay, we see
Yeah, thank
below
you.
ocean.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I have a few things that I have. So let's say I have taken this as an example. So let's say I want to. So these days, like of course, since we have been spoiled by Google search, when you want to search for something, you might want to say, okay, this is what I want to search. I want to develop some vision model for container trucks, and it has to be part of a driver assistance system. So I'm going to take this example, right? Now we are all familiar with the Google Scholar thing. So let's maybe try that out. I'll open up a window probably here. So I think we are all familiar with this. This is probably not the best one, but one thing about Google Scholar, because it's derived from Google search, so you can just type in your question and, sorry, I may have to go to my other browser. Sometimes I have a problem with my Google Scholar. Yeah. So I just go to Scholar, Google. Yeah, so let me go back. Sorry about that. So I'll just type in my question and then search. So one of the things, I mean, we have all seen this, right? Now, if you look at this, one of the things that I want to tell you is like, you get this list of papers. Usually it's highly optimized to the problem that we're looking at. And we see most of these tools are helping us to figure out the best papers to read when you do a search like this. So this is what I have got in this one. So it's saying, okay, this is the first paper that I had to look at. Maybe this is the second one. So it has a list based on relevance that it has come up with. And of course, I think we all know how to share this. The first tool that I just want to share with you is, of course, I think we know this. I think some of you may have tried it out. You have these labs under Google Scholar. So in here, if you try the same question, actually it will do a fairly decent job in kind of summarizing what you want, and it will try to extract part of your the paper that you're looking at and then show you that one as well. So let me let it work on this. And while it works on this, you can see like here, the difference between the normal Google Scholar is like there is a little bit of description. So you can argue whether this is the best papers that are around there, but it certainly comes up with a few based on some criteria. So probably this might be a fairly good one that I might. So there's a Sri Lankan data set that they are talking about, which is interesting. Someone has tried it out. So you could, so the main idea is like you can use these tools to get a set of documents, research papers, and then of course the idea is that you will try to read them. I think in here you can just click here and then retrieve the page, and then this is a new paper that you can see in 2026. So I mean, this is fundamentally how you can search for this. One of the other things that I want to show you is some of you may have access to traditional databases, like if you have access to IEEE Explorer, right? So this is something that I think some universities, I think you may have access to this. So I'll just try the same thing. What is interesting is in some of these traditional, research databases, these kinds of search strings actually do not work. They expect, in the traditional ones, they expect keywords. So you cannot give a natural language kind of string and then kind of get it done. So if you have access to Science Direct or any other, maybe Clarivate, I think Clarivate has some kind of natural language interface. So you may see these kinds of problems. I'll give you another one that which is also a very good source, that is Semantic Scholar. So most of these AI tools are built around Semantic Scholar. It's, I think, by a US AI company called Allen Institute. So if you go to Semantic Scholar also, there are over 230 million research papers that are acceptable, but this also doesn't do natural language search, right? If you do it, it says no paper. So how do you solve this problem? So one quick way of solving this is to ask ChatGPT or your favorite LLM, can you maybe restructure the format so that I can use these databases if you have access to them? So I'll fire up ChatGPT and then maybe ask it, can you convert the search string? So I'm just only so that I can do IEEE Explorer, or maybe it could be Semantic. What was the other one that I was looking at? Semantic Scholar, right? And then maybe I could give my search string. So in these, we normally use keywords. You can get used to the terminology that is typically used, but these days, of course, you can. I think this is a okay way to use AI to maybe get the search string for IEEE Explorer, and you can fine tune it further. And you can see it actually adds a few things. It knows YOLO might be a good model to use for mission-based systems, and then I could actually copy that into my IEEE Explorer, and then I have a search string that works. And then, okay, for some reason that is not working. Let me just try Semantic Scholar. I'm not sure why that didn't work, but usually it should work. So this is Semantic Scholar. So one of the things that I want to highlight is like when you start using these different tools, I mean, this is one way of using it. If you are having access to a database and you cannot do a natural language search, you can use these AIs to come up with a keyword search which is appropriate to the problem that you're looking at. So you can see it has added instead of Sri Lanka, it has said developing country, and then it has figured out this is a computer vision problem, and so that way, it kinds of helps you with the search to do a fairly good search. And in fact, like there are some search tools that are available. So for example, there is a one tool that I have seen, it's called PubMeta. PubMeta is made by two professors that they do a lot of webinars. This actually does a systematic literature review. which is a bit beyond what we are going to discuss today. But what I want to show you here is like if you actually use PubMeta, you can actually get the different search strings for the different databases that you have. So if you have access to different databases, this is another way in which you can use it. So there's a free account here as well. And what you do is like inside the project, I think you can type, I think I already have something. You can actually indicate they have a fairly complicated system, which is based on a certain, so I think you have to go under something called search. And here you can do this search, which is actually the, what we call this original search that you're trying to do. And it will actually produce multiple, you can see it's using an AI a bit like what we did. And then it will come up with some keywords, right? To come up with some keywords. And if you actually go to the database, you can then select which one that you want to search. So if you want to use Scopus database, if that's what you are going to use, it will come up with a search string. So, I mean, there are many tools like this that will help you to come up with the keywords needed for the different databases that are out there. So I think initially, let me show you that way of using AI in a very limited way using the traditional approach initially.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, that's something new. That's useful, I believe, because coming up with keywords is itself is something that overlooked, but something very important, right? Particularly in the usual our databases or the repositories. That's something that's very useful to look at. So the next thing that what I wanted to ask you is also about what do you think is the most useful place where so you are showing just like one example. I believe you will show more such examples as we go, how AI can be like used in literature review. So in the literature review workflow, what do you think AI is most helpful for?
Yeah, so in addition to, so what I talked was like discovering papers in the traditional way, not using the AI-based searching, traditional databases. So the other main advantage that you get is like through even a normal large language model like ChatGPT, you can actually understand a paper. So you have this ability to understand core concepts and visualize it, maybe listen to audio podcast and really understand what a paper is. So I think all of us have experience like putting a PDF to a ChatGPT or whatever the tool that you use, Claude or whatever, and then asking it and, can you explain this? So I think I don't have to do a demo and that everyone's experts on that. Or if you have an equation, trying to figure out what the equation is. I think in the good old days, Roshan, like I actually spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out the various equations that were there because my supervisor was a maths kind of professor. He had a lot of theoretical papers and it took about 1.5 years for me to figure out what those equations were. So but these days, of course, you can just ask it. But let me once again show you some of the tools that you can use. So let me share my screen, and I think most of us are familiar with this tool called NotebookLM. But let me show you a few things that you can do with it. So if I go to NotebookLM, one of the things that you can do is I did this little example. So I think everyone knows this paper. Attention is all you need. I have done.
I'm not sure. No, and I'm not sure whether all of them, because we have people who are not from computer science background.
Okay. Sorry.
You tell the story. It's a useful story to tell.
Yeah. So basically, I think everyone knows what happened in 2022 November when ChatGPT came out, and the world changed basically. That's because almost everyone in the world could start using AI. Earlier, AI was used only for maybe researchers, computing students, and only a few others. But now everyone had an application that everyone could use. So the technology behind large language models that is used widely now is based on a 2017 paper by Google called Attention is All You Need. And I have the paper. It's publicly available. Let me just show you what it looks like. So the paper was published in 2017. So it was published by Google. Apparently, Google had a earlier version of ChatGPT, but they didn't want to release it. But then, the OpenAI guys actually did this. It's a fairly technical paper. Even for a computing person to understand, it's not easy. So you have this transformer model. What it does is like, so large language models are trained on large volumes of text. And if you take ChatGPT and all that, they are trained on the entire data set that is available in the internet. So earlier, there were a lot of problems to scaling these kinds of models. But what transformers did was that they brought in parallelism. And when you look at a particular word, they looked at the context in which the word is around. I mean, not only usually a very simple way of thinking of how these models work is like prediction of the next word. But when you predict the next word, to do a proper prediction, you need to have an underlying understanding of the sentences and where that particular word fits in. So this model actually kind of like solve that. And then you can go into the techniques, and someone might be interested in going into this and then trying to figure out. As you can see, it's not an easy thing to do, even for a computing student, like to really understand, and you need to spend a lot of time. But you can, of course, plug it into something like NotebookLM, and you can generate infographics. And one of the things that I think sometimes students don't do, I'm sure you know NotebookLM, is like when you go into this, you can actually give a prompt here. You can give a prompt, like you can say, I am clueless about computing. Can you explain this? Or, I mean, can you explain this paper? You can simply literally ask like that. So in any of these, like you can generate infographics. There is, you can create slides, you can create videos. In all of these things, I think if you have a pro version, which I have, you can get a cinematic experience of the video, which I will show you, which I did. Here also, you can say, I'm totally clueless about this topic or about computing. Can you explain it to me in a way that I can understand at a high level? And the only thing is like you can do all of these things, and then it does take some time. And one other thing that you can do is you can, of course, type here and do a search like the normal ChatGPT. You can search for it. But let me show you some of the things that you can generate from this. So I'm not sure they can run this particular one. Let me see if I can actually move this slightly. Yeah. So this is the infographic. I think everyone knows how to generate this. So it kind of gives you an understanding of what the topic is in certain details. You can, of course, query it. I think one of the other interesting things that maybe let me reshare this again is this ability to visually look at the problem and then understanding. I strongly believe that in order to understand some concept, you need to have an intuitive understanding of what the topic is. So if you have some intuition, then the technical stuff you can probably get in. So I'll just show you how good this is. So if you have access to the generators, you can see them. I'll just I have downloaded a few, so I think it'll be quicker for me to show it from there. So this is actually what we call the slides. So you can create the slides and then understand. So this is all generated from that paper. You can describe to what level that you want to see. So none of these pictures were there in that paper. You can see it has kind of like figured out how to generate these images, and this probably helps you to understand it in a better way. And I think the best way to understand is like if you can generate a video, which I will just play a few seconds, maybe a minute or so, just to show you how good it is. So this is actually a video, what is known as a cinematic video that you can generate. I think you need to have a pro account for this, but I think I'm pretty sure these will be free in a few months' time. In 4 or 5 months, this is going to be free to everyone. But let me just play this just to show you how easy to what level that it actually reduces the technical paper.
If you show a computer a photograph of a cat, it can identify the animal in a fraction of a second. It takes in the entire image at once, processing all the pixels at the exact same time. But human language doesn't work like a static picture. When we speak or write, we produce a sequence of words, and in language, the exact order of those words is what gives them their meaning. For years, engineers built artificial intelligence to mimic this sequential process. To read a sentence, the AI acted like a stress detective, forced to read a long scroll through a tiny peephole. It could only look at one word at a time, moving strictly left to right. Reading word by word creates a massive traffic jam in a computer's processor. Because the system has to wait for word number 4 to finish before it can even look at word number 5, researchers couldn't speed up the training process. The peephole method also caused a memory problem. By the time our digital detective reached the end of a long paragraph, their tiny window made it nearly impossible to remember the details they read back in the very first sentence. Bound by the strict rules of linear time, early language models hit a wall. As long as they had to read every word in order, they struggled to grasp the deeper context of human speech. In 2017, Google researchers published a paper that threw away the tiny peephole entirely. They proposed a new system called the transformer. Instead of feeding words into the machine one by one, the transformer takes an entire document, paragraphs, pages, whole books, and pins all the words onto a massive evidence board simultaneously. Because the computer no longer has to...
So, you kind of get the gist of it. It's at a very layman kind of way. And what I'm trying to say is if you can maybe take whatever the most complex thing in the world, you can call it maybe it's quantum computing or whatever it is. And you can actually make a version of your complicated document into something that you can understand by intuition. I think once you understand something by intuition, then maybe you can dig a little bit deeper. Because the core of us being humans, whatever we do is to get what is out there into our head and be able to understand. So I think that's something that we have to do. And these are some exciting ways in which we can do that. And I'm pretty sure this particular feature is going to be available for others as well soon.
Yeah, that's really useful. And I think those who are not familiar with the attention model now got at least the glimpse of the idea. It's very nicely put, right? So I think it in any area, I think it will be definitely useful. It's sort of, I think what you're talking about is more for summarizing, understanding, or translating it into something that you can understand and comprehend and so on, right? So that's more that you can do with the AI tools in literature review. So before we go into further tools, let me just also to remind people where things can go wrong. Maybe I can just take a step back and ask you where it can mislead. What are the challenges? And then you can, okay, maybe you can show more tools and more demo and so on. But shall we also spend a little time talking about the risk and misuses where things can go wrong?
Yes. So I think, Roshan, I think you recently even posted this idea where you have a lot of, bogus citations and references. I mean, obviously, some authors have used an LLM to generate the references, and it's a huge problem. And sometimes we also have seen a lot of papers being retracted, mainly because sometimes they have just put the ChatGPT prompt also, and people have been clearly careless. So one of the most common issues using a large language model, it's a design feature. Hallucination is a design feature of a large language model. That's how it becomes creative. Unfortunately, when you ask it to list certain things, it will come up with very realistic looking, maybe literature reviews. So citation is a very common problem that we have. So if you have a large language model, part of your review of your paper, it can hallucinate citations, and it's a huge issue. And I think you were highlighting it recently. So one thing that in any of the processes that we generally talk about, even in research, even we talk about it in any other area, the current thinking is even if you use agentic systems, you got to be the owner. So whatever the AI produces, you have to vet it. So all the citations, you have to vet it, and you have to check one by one that whether it's accurate. Like it means that you have to go to each of these sites and then do that. So that's one common thing. The second common thing is although AI is very good at summarizing, sometimes it can get things jumbled up. So if you have maybe 3-4 papers together and you ask it to summarize some concept, it will do some summarization, and it might actually take out a very minor part of a research paper and highlight it as a big thing, or it might confuse certain things. I can actually share with you something that happened to me recently. So I was actually trying to prepare for another webinar that I had to do, and I knew there was a framework that is typically used in AI. And so the AI also suggested that, and I was very happy. This framework is something there. But then I went back to the original source document because I had given I was using Claude and it had access to a database. So it was actually going to real research papers. It was not hallucinating. But that particular framework was used only for prompting. But it was assuming that it can be used for other parts of the AI process, which is clearly misunderstood. And had I not gone and checked the original paper, because this is a summary that he said, this particular framework can be used for this AI process. But had I not gone and seen, I would have assumed that that was correct. So it also had got it wrong. So in that case, it had actually got the research papers and it was trying to summarize the research papers to extract certain things out of it. So sometimes that can also go wrong. So I think summaries also you've got to check. And sometimes, basically, I would say if you have an AI tool that is citing a research paper that you have given, because now when you use the RAG system where you upload some research papers, you are pretty sure that it's not going to hallucinate that much. But it may pick out some obscure part of the research paper and then try to highlight that as a major point. So unless you go back, you're not really sure whether it has really picked up a major point in the research paper that you're citing. So I think that part you got to check as well, although it's good at summaries. So one of the other things you have to understand is when you start using the AI, sometimes you don't recognize the fact that these have a cutoff date. There is a time frame where it doesn't know anything about. So I was using, a few months ago, I was using Claude for some specific thing, and it was insisting we are in 2025. Like whenever I asked, it was saying 2025. So that's because probably the cutoff date of that particular model was 2025. So sometimes, when you do a research gap using an AI tool, it may say that there is a certain thing that is not being done. So it may be, it is probably not true because it may not have access to a lot of data. There is a cutoff point in which it may not understand certain things. And even if you give it access to 3,000 research papers, there can be research papers which are outside the scope where that particular gap has been done. So you need to probably look at, I would say if you are going to use an AI tool to help you find the literature, you probably have to use a couple of tools, because now if you use a particular AI tool, you will get a list of research papers in a particular priority order. If you use a different tool, you get a different set. Use another tool, you'll have a different set. So maybe it might be good to use a couple of tools and then develop a merge and then develop a data set so that you have a fairly wide coverage of things. I think the most dangerous part, I think, is when you use AI is because AI, the English of AI is much better than our English. So it's it looks very confident and it looks sounding very when we normally see something that is written in proper English, we assume that it's correct. I think it's a thing that we have in our brain. But if you have a student who is going through summarized, research papers and then, trying to understand research papers through the summaries, they may think they know everything. Maybe they've gone through 20 such papers, but probably it's a false sense of mastery because they haven't truly understood the research paper. They've only looked at summaries. Summarizations help you to understand what the paper is about, but you I think have to go back and then at least the key papers in your research, you have to read it and then truly understand what the paper is about. I think those are some points that I want to add, Roshan.
Yeah, in fact, I just recollected something about summarizing papers. So even when I remember even pre-AI, there used to be students who, when we ask them to do a literature survey, what they do is they go and read one review paper, right? And not go into other papers. You just take that and say, okay, so this is what it is, and they don't go into deep. So it's good. Yes, obviously it's good as a starting point where you can find the breadth. What are the papers that are there, how sort of they are connected in a review paper in that context, if we are reading a review paper or something. But here in AI, again, yes, you can find those many papers, and like you said, to go breadth, again, you can try different tools, tools that are connected to different archives, research archives, and so on, so that you get the breadth, and then obviously, like you said earlier, you had to go deep into some of those papers that you still have to do, I believe. And also, you just highlighted the point, multiple points, right? One is about hallucination, which you said is a feature. I don't know how many of the participants here understand what you meant, right? So in fact, like for everybody's understanding, we can make AI deterministic, but then it's not interesting, right?
Yeah.
So it will be like just asking question, give the same answer all the time, like a parrot. Not going to be very interesting to people. So it's a feature that we let it to imagine and say things and create things and like hallucinate actually. Right? So that's what actually Nuan mentioned there. And also, you have highlighted a few other points. I hope like the cutoff point, you also mentioned, so because training and retraining is not so easy. So we don't do it very often. So we wait to the research, these companies wait for a while to do it. And therefore, the model trained from the past, and there could be gaps, particularly in research. Nuan, just one question related to what you are showing on the tools. So things like I think NotebookLM type of a tool is a bit different from something like Cloud or
Yeah.
ChatGPT, right? Maybe you can, for a general audience, they might not know the difference. So now in Cloud and NotebookLM, you are showing like you uploaded a paper and ask questions about it, and even if you do the same thing in Claude or ChatGPT, which is different from what you are doing in NotebookLM, right? So the underlying model is different. Maybe you can highlight a bit about it so that it will be useful, because the students might, or anybody who is listening might think these are two different tools, will do the same thing. Actually, they are not doing the same thing. Maybe you can just highlight a bit
Yeah.
of.
So I think if I'm not mistaken, NotebookLM is built on top of Gemini. That's how it probably works. Um, what happens is like in general, if you take a AI tool like maybe ChatGPT or Claude, and if you just ask it an open question and you don't provide the source documents, it will go on its own. And probably some of these tools will search the web if they have that feature enabled. In fact, most of the tools do that. So then what happens is like the sources are out there in the internet. So if you ask a typical question, it may go to the internet and then find many documents which are contradictory. And then it might try to come up with an answer because you haven't given the actual sources for it to look at. So in a general way, when you use something like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, and if you provide the source documents and say you give the prompt in such a way that only to use the documents that you have given, so then it's going to search and then provide answers only within the documents that you have uploaded. So that is the key difference that is there. If you take NotebookLM, it has been taught by Google some additional skills, you can call it skills, where it has the ability to, it has been trained the ability where it can take some text and maybe create infographics. It has been taught or trained how to take some text and then create a video or create a audio file. So I think that is where NotebookLM is different, where it has some additional let's say, training that is being provided to it, so that it can produce different types of outputs a normal model will not be able to do, because they don't have that particular training provided to the large language model or the foundation model.
So that's a good point. Like even if you want to go deep and detail and to be more accurate, specialized tools and specialized trained models are better. And NotebookLM provides that. And also there are many other such research focused tools. I think Nuwan will talk about few more as well as we go. They provide specific specific feature so what Nuwan was talking about, like infographics is a specific feature, and NotebookLM is specialized, trained on that, and therefore it can do it well without much of an issue and without a lot of errors. Or nowadays, I don't see any errors actually. It does reasonably very, very few errors, very minor errors.
And I think OpenAI has recently, I couldn't try it out, they have come up with a new vision model, which is supposed to be very good as well, like the what you call the nano banana kind of ones. And I have heard it does text also really well. So I mean, all these companies are competing, and end product is like, I think we are benefiting from that competition, I think.
Getting better results. Yeah. So let's move on from those issues. I think like that gives like a good background or a good clarification in terms of you have to be always careful. I think that is also something that no one highlighted. Ultimately, the researcher is using these tools, and therefore they'll have to bet on the output, meaning like they'll have to take the responsibility of the output. So the output, whatever it's producing, is not the tool's output. You can't go back and blame the tool. It's for you to figure out and look at and go back and look at the source. Even experienced researchers like Noan had also shared his experience about, yeah, one of these tools miss or missing the point, that finding, okay, so some framework is used in one place, but it assumes it's in other places as well. So it can get confused, and even if it can confuse with few paper that we give, it obviously is already confused with all the things that it has read. So it can mix things up nicely, and we still have to be careful. So let's take that message and go forward. And beyond summaries, and we in fact mentioned earlier about synthesizing, and he mentioned about going beyond summaries and doing more. A couple of things we want to do. One is to synthesize, and what sort of tools and things are that out there to take it beyond summarizing, beyond like understanding things that you already have presented to us.
Shall I go to a demo, Roshan?
Please, yeah.
Yeah. So let me just show you. I think some of you may be aware of these tools. I think I have a few listed here. So I mean, I think one of the things that to extract data out, there are a couple of tools that are out there. So as you mentioned, Roshan, one very good place to start, learning about a certain area of research is going through a survey paper. So going through a survey paper helps you quite a lot to understand what is out there. But as you pointed out, I think in some cases you have to go back to the original document to understand it better. So I'm sure you have, some of our students have gone through some of these tools. I'll show you a few other ways in which you can, of course, Roshan's question was about how to do writing, but in order to do writing, you probably need to understand what is in there in the papers. And then I think we can go into some tools that can help you to maybe go with the writing. So there are a huge lot of tools that actually can do that. But let me start with this Elicit. So Elicit, I think, is a very popular tool that's out there. And you may see that it also has a very advanced feature. So for example, at least in some of the journals, so there's this, I think this would have been touched in the last episode also. So there are these reviews that can be done, which are like called survey papers, or you can do what is known as a systematic review, where the criteria for selecting the papers of the review is well established, and there are different standards for that. And now you find that there are tools that are able to do that automatically. And Elicit also has a tool called, but it's inside a paid wall, where it's supposed to be able to do those kinds of, basically it can do a survey paper for you according to a specific kind of thing. But it's a paid version, and you can see a few of those. But let me use the normal prompt that I did, and the same question that I asked. Now this is actually used widely to get research papers which are particularly around the question that you're asking. So it's the same question that I'm asking. And what is different in Elicit is that you can, in fact, get summaries of the paper, and you can actually control what they are. So it does some kind of ranking. So maybe like, because this is Sri Lanka, and you can see there's one Professor Lalit Dirisinga who has published a paper related to container transportation. And so it is coming up with some kind of, you can see some Sri Lankan names coming here. So probably because I have mentioned Sri Lanka here, it's coming up with those. Now, one of the things that is interesting about this particular one is like you can actually add columns. So for example, I can add a column, like I can say, I want to see the methodology that has been used. So you can, for each of the papers, it will try to extract the methodology that has been used. If it's not being used, it will show you that. Basically, what happens is like it's like you downloading this paper and then asking ChatGPT extract the methodology from that particular paper called iDriver, and at least it does that for you. And you could ask many other things, like maybe you are interested about the sample size used. The sample size means like, maybe it's the survey size, or it could be something where they have done some kind of a research part. And so it says it's not mentioned. So here in this particular case, it's not, in these probably it's not mentioned. That's why it comes like this. And you can, go ahead, and then there are some examples of these as well. So you can see it has come up with some module evaluation and performance. I could maybe enable that. So these are some of the suggested columns that are there. So what this allows you to do is like you can actually see in these papers how these different points are addressed. So instead of going to the paper, you can quickly see whether there is a paper that you want to spend a lot of time digging deeper. So essentially, that is what Elicit allows you to do. And one of the other things that you may want to do is like you may want to find out papers which are like relevant to the paper that you're looking at. So basically, the citations actually help you to do that. And there are these graph-based search methods like ResearchRabbit and connected papers both actually allow you to do that. So if you go to ResearchRabbit, this is a good tool for you to look at. Probably I have to log in. I think I may have. Let me just try this and see. I may have run out of my limits. No, I have not. So basically, like it'll come up with a set of papers. And what I can do here is like I can select the papers that I'm interested in. And if I go into any of these papers, say, for example, if I'm actually interested in this one, I can let me see if I can actually show you this. So let's say I have selected this particular paper. I can actually go under this similar link and then actually get a graph of related papers to the paper that I have selected. So these graphs indicate, like, for example, this particular paper has been cited by these 4 papers. So you can actually find out important papers in the area that you're looking at. So this is an isolated paper that's out there. So for each of these papers, you can go. So for example, if you're interested in this, you can actually find out other papers that you have that are relevant to this. So these are the, you can view this in different formats, but essentially this will help you to identify some of the key papers in the area that you're looking at. And connected papers also does the same thing. So if you go to connected papers, you have a similar kind of interface where you can actually see how these different papers are related. And okay, in this particular one, I think we may have to use ChatGPT and then get one develop search. So some of these things expect keywords. So then you probably need to translate, and then probably your ChatGPT can come up with a good suggestion for you. I'll just take the first one. And in here, what happens is, like, let's say if you are interested in this particular paper, there is a link, a graphical link here, where you can, I think I may have gone beyond my limit, but you get only 5, I think. Just a few things that I wanted to show, Roshan. But I didn't come back to the writing, but let me do that after you have a few questions more. Yeah.
Okay. Right, yeah, that's good. Yeah, so and also we can also see the limitations of the free tools. We'll have
Yes.
to do a lot of research. So that's a good point, yeah. And the tools, particularly, I think the places like now connected papers and research rabbit are a good place to start, right? So now in addition to a review paper, where a few review papers, that's another place where we can start and explore and go breadth, find all related papers quickly, and it can be done so easy, so fast. We used to spend days and days finding related papers otherwise. So that I think will be very useful if we can properly use it. So that's something that's very useful there. So let's move on, and then we'll see whether we can get some more demos and examples to see. So the next question I wanted to ask is in the line like you said you'd show how to write in the demo a little later, or how we can do synthesize. At the same time, we also were talking about finding things like the research gap or the contribution. That's like the last part of the whole process, right? So how do you think the literature review can help in researchers identifying gaps, and not just gaps but genuine gaps, let's say the gaps that we can take it forward and formulate research questions from there and take it forward. So that's sort of the last part of the literature review we wanted to do, right? So any thoughts?
Yeah, let me share a recent experience that I had, Roshan. So this is actually a module that I co-taught with some other foreign professors, and this particular subject was actually at master's level, but I was fairly interested in the approach that they used. The subject was on advanced research topics in machine learning, or AI it was actually. And one of the things that they were emphasizing was, so there is always this conflict about these AI tools, and then how do you do it without the AI tools? And what was the way that we actually ran the course, because knowing that these AI tools were there, students basically had, obviously there were a lot of lectures, and then there was a series of uh, submissions that they had to do. So each one takes about 4 to 5 weeks. So it's a fairly large project that is given to the students, and they have to do a literature review, and then they have to basically come up with a research paper of what they're doing. So one way that we ensured that the students understood the papers that they were selecting, was that they had to keep a log of how they were progressing doing that particular project over a period of 4 weeks. So in the lectures, we would actually go and then look at what the students were doing, what they were reading, how much they have understood. And so that it was a very traditional way of doing things. But the idea was like they had to go into depth and understand the papers. So this was really traditional AI research. And the first project that they had to do was somewhat similar to what I shared. It was basically a vision-based solution for autonomous vehicle. So the students had to, as part of the submission, not only read the core papers like the YOLO paper or whatever, they had to, so if you take a typical AI paper, or I guess it's different in different disciplines. Usually in computing papers, the leading edge ones, you have sometimes the algorithms are available, sometimes the code is available, the data sets are available. So these students were asked to actually go and implement or run the code that is available in GitHub and run it through the data sets that they chose. So basically they had to understand the research paper, take the data set, they take the algorithms and implement it as it was done. In other words, reproduce what the authors had done in those papers. So that was the initial part of what they had to do. And part of the submission was not really creating new knowledge, but basically re-implementing the various things that were said in those research papers. So what I really understood as part of the outcome was these students were able to truly understand how a state-of-an-art vision system, at least at a primary level, how those things can be implemented. They got some kind of understanding. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I think it's in whatever research that we do, I think it's important that although we can use these AI tools to to help you to figure out what is out there, at least the core areas or the core papers that in your area, like maybe 4 or 5 papers, you got to implement the set up as it is described in the paper. Only if you can do that, then you truly understand that particular area of knowledge. And then when you find a new paper, then you can very quickly see the differences, like how is that paper different from the paper that you have implemented. So getting into depth of your whatever discipline that you have and truly understanding how those papers were written, how what the methodology was, and then really doing it, running those programs was hard for those students. But I think they really understood what was going there. And then, of course, finally they have a project. I'm sure they'll do a good job, like because they have been able to implement some of the papers which are important to them in their discipline. So I think I just wanted to add that as a point, the importance of understanding what is out there before you can use AI to help you. But then once you do that, I think you can naturally figure out the differences that are there in the other papers that you're looking at.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, okay, so if even we were talking about synthesizing from the beginning as well. So, in fact, like synthesizing is not for the AI tool. Synthesizing is for you, right? So
Yeah,
you like as a
you
researcher,
got to.
yeah, you got to figure out what's going on. Obviously, we can use AI tools, like you said, to do a lot of different things, starting from discovery. You started there, like, okay, even keywords. Now you can figure out keywords faster. But then obviously, you had to you had to be in the thick and thin of what's going on there, and as a center of all this, and that's how you can start. And obviously, for synthesizing what's going on, what I had to do, how I can contribute, obviously, I'll have to understand in depth. So I think the message you gave and there is reproducing some previous work or the state of the art or what has happened in the latest papers would add a lot of value to how it was done. So that is sort of the questions I wanted to ask. And do you have a few more demos to show as last points, uh, or I
Yeah,
spent a lot of
let me just show you one more thing, since you asked about this
right.
how to write and all that. There are a lot of tools. I'm not really sure whether these are the ones that we should be using, though. So, for example, there is a tool called Jenny. I think it's called
Yeah.
Jenny AI. And what it does is, I mean, it's a bit something that helps you to write. So if you are writing something, you just start writing part of it, and then it fills up the thought. So, I mean, the idea there is, let me just try to put deep learning or something, and it may actually figure out how to fill this up. So the idea there is, like, if you have a writing block, let's say sometimes you have a writing block, you don't know what is the next sentence. So maybe some of these can help you like this. But I think when at least up to now, what we are saying is, like, when you want to do writing, at least the initial thoughts have to be yours. Maybe you can use the AI for checking the grammar and helping you with these other types of things. I also want to show you a few other things that, since you talked about writing, there are tools out there that can do writing, but I think maybe we can use those tools as a way in which, I use Perplexity a lot. I mean, if you want to, ask it something, it can actually come up with a good summary. Perplexity will look at, maybe you want to create a survey paper and you don't have a survey paper. I think for that kind of thing, there are some tools that you can use. So there is a tool called Consensus. So in Consensus, if you actually type in something, it will come up with a summary. Once again, I think these are useful for you if you don't have a survey paper in that area to help you to understand. There are a few other tools, like you could use Gemini and then ask it to write something, and with the what is known as deep research, it will come up with a fairly good summary, once again, to understand. So there are a couple of tools like that. I also want to show you something that one of my colleagues actually developed. He's now in New Zealand. So this problem of this citation issue. So he developed a tool. So if you copy paste your citations, it will actually tell you whether it has been hallucinated or not. Which I will, maybe at a different time, I'll show you, or maybe share the link here. Thanks, Krishna.
Yeah, so that can be useful, in fact. Yeah, I mean, in any case, what I'm usually telling the students is, okay, so if we are getting some citations from AI tool, whether it is like a proper tool where it's focused on research or not, obviously you'll have to check yourself, right? You have to check for a DOI, you have to check for the paper, but yeah, if there's again a tool that can give you the link, yeah, that's even better, right? So that's a lot of tools and a lot of discussions, and I think we are sort of coming towards the end of this discussion, and I'm sure the audience who are around are going to uh, jump with a lot of questions. That usually is the case for our usual discussion of this nature, and I still see a large number of people are around, and they will be starting the question. So let's, Kapila, are you around? We can maybe
I'm around,
ask.
sir.
Ah, you are okay. I go through, I don't know, 50 tools.
Oh, so, so basically, yeah. So I would briefly thank Professor Roshan Ragil and also Professor Nuan Kodagude for those informative points and videos and live demos. And if I so now the floor is open. I'm talking to the audience actually now. The floor is open for the questions. Please feel free to type in the questions if you have any questions in the chat box, or else you can actually unmute and ask your question as well. So I got some questions as direct messages. So I think I can compress like them into this basic idea. So you actually showed us several levels of literature survey related search. So where would these tools kind of lie or kind of rank? Especially, I think people wanted to compare like Notebook LM, and then things like Perplexity. So what are general tools? What are specialized tools? What are the tools that we can use with a greater degree of confidence? Likewise.
If I may go with that, so if you actually ask the question, like I had this small thing in my family. Uh, well, most of us started using ChatGPT. Everyone used ChatGPT, but now we are slowly moved into Claude. My wife is still using ChatGPT. So she was recently kind of putting a question in, okay, about split Northern Union. It came up with a very old link, which is no longer there, even that place is also not there. And she was saying, ChatGPT said this and all that. So the point that I want to make is like when you use a normal large language model, they have a cutoff point. They may get a lot of wrong information. So if you want to go a little bit better than that, Perplexity is the tool. Perplexity goes through more valid documents, so it's a tool. Now, for example, if I have a title of a paper and I don't know how to get it, maybe I don't have access to a database. Maybe there's a free version of it. So I could just give the title to Perplexity and say, can you find a free link where it's available? It'll do that as long as it's a legal link. So it's a very good tool to find out stuff. And in terms of research, maybe your research papers, finding it out, it's grounded, and usually the links are more reliable because the way it has been set up, it's going through some validated links. I think it goes to some academic papers as well. Whereas if you take NotebookLM, uh, you are expected to put up the documents. It does have a deep research feature like Gemini. You can actually type in a question and get it to generate stuff just like how you might do in Gemini. But the typical use case of using NotebookLM is you upload your documents, your sources, your valid sources that you trust, and then you try to interpret them in different ways you want. If you like audio, you can generate audio podcast kind of thing, can visualize. Infographics is a great way to understand something. We are visual creatures. We are not really good at numbers and text as humans. So that's a good way. And then, of course, videos. That's also very entertaining for most of us.
Yeah, I think so. The point about Notebook LM is it's like Noan said that the way how it is designed is that we give the information and we do things with it, right? So we are giving the uh, papers or books, whatever it is, and then we are going to explore within that, and that I think is the most reliable, right? So in terms of, and then yeah, Perplexity. No one was talking about Perplexity. In fact, like Perplexity, the whole idea they introduced it is they were targeting more of a search engine replacement, right? So not a chatbot, right? So the difference between, obviously we know the difference between a chatbot like chatbot is more of an entertainment tool to start with, and then it has become useful now. So we have been building chatbots since 1960s. We wanted to build chatbots like us, right? So to talk to them, and Perplexity was built more of like a search engine, and it gives those links and evidences better, I think. So that's yeah, but
So
we
the
are.
link that I shared, Roshan, is like if you just paste in some things, if you haven't hallucinated once, you can actually figure out. It does some internal check. It's a very small program. I think one of my friends who's now in New Zealand developed. I actually shared your post to him, and then he said, I got this cool tool that I wrote, and
Ah,
I actually tested it out. It
yeah,
works fairly well. It doesn't
yeah.
work for archive. Archive papers doesn't work, but because they are not listed, I think.
Mm, mm. So proper paper. So those who are students who are there, you can take a note of this tool. It's just to check whether the paper is a real paper actually. Uh, so it's basically, I think it's checking against some
Yeah,
proper databases or archive,
database. Yeah.
search archives. So ultimately, but yeah, otherwise you will have to go and check yourself. Yes, we'll search and find them. So
So before we move on from that point to other questions, would you both be able to give us some general information about, how usual LLMs work and how RAG models, retrieval augmented generation works, and not like, yeah, how can we, how should we use them? Kind of a general idea.
no?
Yeah. So it I think Roshan also mentioned this. If you want your answer to be, let's say you're writing a novel and you want it to be creative, then go by all means use ChatGPT or whatever as it is. Because you want something creative out of it. Maybe you want to get some ideas of a story. You don't want to be constrained. You want to do some brainstorming. These tools are fantastic at brainstorming. Even project ideas, you can have a chat and brainstorm. So then maybe you don't want to put an input. You just ask it something and then you just have that conversation. But if you want some direct facts, what's the population in Sri Lanka? What is some statistics about universities? If you just ask the ChatGPT, it might go and then connect to an older set of data that it has gone through, I don't know, a long time ago, and then it will come and say, these are the statistics in Sri Lankan universities or something. But if you have a source document, you can upload that, and that's basically something like RAG. So then you ask, please only come up with the answer with that. So then since it's going to base the answer based on the document that you have uploaded and you have vetted it, basically you're vetting it, saying that it's an accurate source, then the answers are more accurate. So I would say for creative things, don't use RAG, but for very specific things, use RAG.
Yeah, just to extend on it. So the idea of RAG is that, yeah, like Noan said, so just to work on your document, but you have somebody to go through it, right? So you don't have to do it yourself. So usually you would have to do it. Now there is somebody else, the general or LLM or a foundation model, which can go through your documents and tell you something, but then it will tell you something from the document that you are given. So that's the idea of RAG. But LLMs is, yeah, in fact, like Nuan, I also wanted to reiterate the point, right? So the hallucination and connecting different things together is useful in brainstorming, and particularly now useful. I always try to highlight this point. It's useful in connecting different areas. For example, so let's say there's a problem in agriculture, and the solution is in, I don't know, management, right? So uh, normally we might not be connecting these two areas together generally, right? So unless we sit together and brainstorm, but now these tools can support us connect areas that we have never thought there are connections. So
And if I may add one more thing, like this is all about, I strongly believe these tools are, if you use it in the right way, we have to use these tools to enhance ourselves.
yeah.
So the main thing is our brain. So one very good way that if you remember, like if you, your best teachers at school are the teachers who can tell you stories about even the complex stuff. Now these tools, these large language models can come up with good analogies. So you take some complex thing in your area, whatever it is, and say, maybe you can say, I like cricket, I like football, and this is about me. Can you give me an analogy for this complicated scenario in terms of things that I like? it will come up with some fantastic analogies. As Roshan mentioned, like it pick up this different things and then come up with a story that actually makes sense.
Kapila, looks like you are overwhelmed with the questions or what? You are muted. You are muted.
Yeah, I'm
Kapila.
muted. Yeah. Give me 6. So I'm trying to like streamline the question. So this is big question. I think a student from SLIT is asking this. So there are two parts of the question. I think the second one is very specific. So I will not shoot that as a question, but I will use that part to set the stage for the question. So what he's asking is, I use a Zipline International Incorporation official website as it reflects the main idea of my medical drone research. So he's asking, is this acceptable for a website? I don't think in this kind of forum that we can kind of ratify that kind of a claim. But I think it gives the idea, or it actually explains the question he has. So let me read out his first question. Are literature reviews limited to journal and conference papers, or can we also use websites, blogs, and company reports? Right, I think that is what he's actually asking. How do we identify reliable sources since many new professionals now publish blogs and articles using AI? I think it's a very genuine question. I think the first part is, do we only consider the serious research publications as a base material for literature surveys? Can we extend on the commercial kind of other stuff? And the other thing is, now everybody's an expert with the help of AI. And how would this actually strengthen or dilute the our base material? No answer.
If I may go first, Roshan, I mean, the idea of a journal paper or a conference paper, it's peer reviewed.
Exactly.
As the student mentioned, anyone can go, like I can say my name is this and so, and I can create a website and put a blog or whatever. Company can do that as well, saying their product is much better than all the other products in the world. There's no one who checks that except sometimes maybe the author is also not checking. It's just a large language model who is generating it, and you simply publish because it looks really nice. You see this, it's called, I think it's called the AI slop, right? I mean, in everywhere you see that. AI generated stuff everywhere. So if you want to do genuine research, I believe you have to, I mean, there are issues with journals and conferences also, but at least we say that it's been looked at by other independent people who are not part of that organization, who are not friends of that particular author. So
Yeah,
I think
obviously. Yeah, so at least up to now, we don't know future. So up to now, the reliable resource sources are peer reviewed, right? So it's reviewed by others, properly. Like there are systematic ways of doing these reviews, and the reliable resources we use, journals and conferences, they do such reviews. And that is where things like, so if you are looking at other type of publication, then we are moving into the area of predatory type publications where we haven't discussed about those, but that's the idea, right? So we are still within the peer-reviewed publications.
Yeah, so I have some questions, like one-line questions, which are like kind of general questions. Uh, and so before that, I have this burning question. Arvind is asked me several times actually.
Is it?
So how can we evaluate the research gap after completing a literature review, given the research gaps are often identified from the limitations and future directions of existing studies? So I would ask Roshan sir to go first, because in your brain you have the future sessions also in mind. So he's asking like, how can we maybe transform the literature review to the research gap?
Yeah, so in fact, like, yeah, so that is what we are going to discuss exactly next. And whoever is burning had to wait for a little longer. So for now, yeah, so we have, in fact, like, we can take a step from what we discussed today. So what we are talking about today is to find all that is out there and synthesizing is what we said, like understanding what is really going on, and how they are connected, what is being done. Like Nuwan also, I also reiterated the point where he said, we are going to look at what has happened, and can this be useful, and how do you make it useful? Can it be scaled? Can it be real? So if not, he'll have to go to the next step. Next step is the gap, right, that is not filled, right? So in fact, like the next session is going to be on starting from research gap. How do you properly formulate research questions? So questions that uh, we will be answering in our research. I mean, whoever is doing the research. So that's going to be the next.
Can I add another thing? Because we are all talking about AI, but I think there's a very important role done by a supervisor or your leaders in the community. Now, if you ask an AI, the problem that I was trying to solve, automated driving for trucks, if you ask any AI, they will say it's possible to create something like that in Sri Lanka. But we know the Sri Lankan condition, the roads and all that. So it may not be able to make a human judgment. It's very positive. It will say you can do that. Go ahead with that research. But if they ask you, Roshan, is that going to be a good final year research project where they can make a demo one? You might say maybe it's not practical.
Exactly. Yeah. People. Yeah. So yeah, we totally forgot that there are research supervisors, right? Good that one pointed.
You
It's like
already forgot.
AI and research students, and forgot that they are supervisors. Yes.
So before going on to several elaborate questions, sir, there are these one-line questions. Like one person asks how to write a review paper, and I think same person asked for the research writing, which tools should we use? These are very general questions, so I will reframe these questions. So with all these tools, or basically in the era of AI, what kind of a crude workflow you would suggest in writing a review paper, and for each step, what are the tools you would suggest? Should I ask the question again?
No, I think we got the question,
Okay, cool.
and no one.
So
Like
maybe
the way,
Roshan, you can, yeah.
the way how we went through the discussion is also a similar flow, right? So if you synthesize all what we discussed, you end up in a review paper. But we haven't gone, like Nuwan also mentioned, we haven't gone into things like a systematic literature review, how there are frameworks where you can use and so on. We haven't gone into those details. We were just generally discussing a literature review. And if you want to write a review paper, it's the synthesis of what we discussed from the beginning, starting from in fact, like all the tools that we discuss in that process will be useful. That is what I think Nuwan is going to say. But Nuwan, you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I think the main difference in a systematic review is like you are very precise on the literature that you are finding. Because now, normally when we do like say if you have a topic, you just try to find a few research papers here and there, which kind of suits your thinking. So they are more aligned to the topic that you have. But so you find positive papers that kind of strengthen your idea to go forward. But in a systematic review, you have a very clear search criteria. You say you are taking only papers from 2006 to 2025. What are the keywords that you are going to use? What are the databases that you are going to use? So the main idea is reproducibility. So some other researcher can also use the same keywords and filters and then get the same set of papers. So maybe you get about 20,000 papers. And then you eliminate those papers in a systematic way, saying, okay, these are the ones that you're going to look at. And there are tools that can do that. There are actually, the HubMeta is one of those. Can actually do a systematic or meta review. And Prisma model, I think in the previous session also that was discussed, there is a very specific framework called Prisma where you precisely indicate the search criteria for your literature. And you go through a very large volume of literature. It's not just 10 papers, maybe you go through hundreds, if not thousands of papers, and you extract information, you look at the methodology in a very, kind of like not a biased kind of way, very general kind of way, and then try to extract the essence of that and then try to interpret the literature for that particular topic that you're looking at. So there are existing papers that are out there. And what has happened is I think there are very good tools that are coming out. And in fact, in some of the journals in computing, at least, these systematic reviews are not accepted, I think, now.
Yeah, true. That's correct. Recently, the computing journals have decided not to accept the systematic reviews because there are AI
AI
tools that
generated.
doing decent systematics. Because systematics is the point, right? So, like Nuwan said, systematic is a very constrained framework. Everything is set, and therefore it's a step-by-step process, more mechanical until the last point where you do the synthesis and the critical analysis and so those parts.
So I think there was a question just popped just before you started the answer, Nuansa. It's actually asking about Prisma. So let me read it out. I think you partially actually answered that question already. While doing systematic literature review, we are going to summarize and synthesize from our selective papers through Prisma. Rather than those selective papers, how could we find additional papers that supports the sentences or the arguments?
Yeah, so this is actually not part of the systematic review, or like taking the systematic review forward, I guess. I guess that was the...
So this is
Yeah.
so this has two parts. So basically, one thing you said, like the rote way of doing reviews, you actually emphasize that we find a proposition and we just try to reinforce with whatever the biased piece of information we have. So they are asking actually, how could we find additional papers that supports the sentences or arguments? I think this is touching that base. But again, the general question there, I think, as I say, is rather than those selective papers coming through Prisma framework, how can we go beyond?
I don't think you can. I mean, the whole idea of a systematic review is to have it selective, right? So you are restricting and you are putting a systematic. So, but then obviously things like when they are even framework like Prisma has room for our judgment. Like you can decide what are the eliminating criteria, what are the inclusion criteria, right? So those is up to us to decide, right? So if you want more papers, you can add more years, for example, right? Older papers. Or you can decide, okay, I'm not going to exclude these, or I'm still going to include these. So those inclusion, exclusion criteria, we can change to fine tune and add. But obviously the whole idea, like Nuwan was already highlighted, is that if somebody else follow the same process, inclusion, exclusion criteria, years and whatnot, they'll and also the research reports, by the way. So if you consider all that, then you'll end up with the same set of papers. That's the whole idea of it being systematic. So if you follow the same steps, same inclusion, exclusion criteria, and years, you get the same papers. But if you want more papers, yes, you can add by reducing or adding more years, uh, not including more elimination criteria, so keeping more papers into your pool, and so on.
Yeah, so then I think this is a follow-up question for that drone thing. I don't know if we should answer these kind of very specific questions in the open forum.
Yeah.
Let me shoot it anyways. I'm
No,
proposing...
move on. Maybe it's like controversial. We are going to talk about
Not controversial. So he's actually giving his research title and asking, is it? I mean, I will not read out the research title, but what he's repeatedly asking is, so apart from the research papers and everything, because he's doing something, medical drone kind of a thing, is it okay to cite the official website of some similar project or some similar commercial company? I think this is something most young researchers face when they do applied research, right? It's not just papers. And I think, especially in, machine learning and all, now the standards are set by the industry. Latest knowledge is in like industrial white papers or just snippets in the websites.
Even if it's industry, as like even the major things like machine learning paper is coming from industry, but like industry plus academic researchers, but those are anyway published, and also serious ones are either papers or patents. Again, patents are reviewed, whether they call it peer review or not, they are reviewed. So those are things that we can consider as serious, but websites, just the websites, if I don't know what we are getting out of a website. If it is some, if it is used as some, like not as another, like, okay, so maybe as a background, it might be okay, right? So, like we didn't go into those details in our discussion. So we were talking about literature review, which is about work that are solving a problem similar to the problem we are trying to solve. That is where the starting point, right? So
This is the
maybe the,
exact context, sir. I think
yeah,
he's asking
so,
about something like that. This is
yeah.
about writing a proposal, actually.
So for background, yes, you can refer to, yeah, so these sort of things I've done earlier. For motivation, background includes things like an introduction, motivation. Okay, these are people who were doing this work. I also want to do something similar. This is a website where drone, medical, whatever thing was done to cite them. It's not a research per se, right? So maybe they have done some research to build those companies, but we are not taking it as a research because the research part of it, like the properly done research, reviewed article or outcome is not out there. It's a product that is out there, so we can just refer to it as a background. I wanted to do something like this. Right? So, but not it cannot be compared against, we can't compare our work against that work because they don't have the research findings or the outcome presented.
Cool. So basically, yeah, your insight is like put it as background information, not as rigorous research information. Nuance, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Roshan was saying. So, I mean, let's say if a student is developing a prototype of something, there might be existing products out there, maybe commercial products, and maybe the student is trying to make a subversion of it or a smaller version of something.
Or
So,
adapt it to Sri
if there
Lanka?
is, yeah. So then maybe, as Roshan mentioned, like it can be some background information that you're citing that there are products like that available, and maybe it's a technical specification of the product that the website has.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's like, reverse engineering the specs or something like that. So I'm getting a lot of very focused questions. But there's one thing general. It's a follow-up to the Prisma thing we discussed actually. So actually, this is a real problem though. So what he's saying is just assume if we select 45 papers for Prisma, oh, the Prisma filters you out 45 papers. When we submit, the journal may say you need more uh,
Okay.
references. In fact,
Mm.
like few hours ago, I told the same thing to my students as well, one of my students as well. So then how can we expand? I think Roshan's already mentioned like expand the time
Mm.
span or something. So what are few
Mm.
other, so let me put it like this way. When we do a systematic review through Prisma or in general literature review, if we want to get more papers or sources, but in a genuine and legitimate manner, what are a few tips that you can give with or without AI as experienced researchers?
Yeah. Noan, you want to go first? I have.
I think, Roshan, you answered this. I mean, obvious
Yeah.
one other thing is, other than what you answered, like go for additional databases. There might be a lot of other databases that are available, but some might be commercial paywall kind of things where you may have a lot of papers. So one other thing is like I want to highlight, when we do use these tools, we may not access everything that's out there in the world. There are obviously maybe theses which have been written and not published.
Yeah.
There are different literature that is out there which is not visible to us. So I think this is where maybe checking from other sources and checking with seniors in the research area and then talking to them and seeing whether this is been done or whether this is something exciting might help actually.
Kapila, you are being, or your person being so disparate, I can give one more idea,
Sure,
which
definitely.
which is like you can expand your problem.
Mm.
Right? So you can generalize, I would say, right? So the more specialized the problem is, the lesser number of uh, research the papers you're going to find, right? So you can take a step back, I would say, right? Take a step back. It might help in a lot of other places as well. Like for instance, if you're right, no one was talking about this area, where he was talking about this autonomous truck, right? So instead of autonomous truck, we can say autonomous vehicles, right? So there will be a lot of commonalities between different type of vehicles. They are not specialized, but then you can find a lot of research on cars, if not trucks, right? So that can also in one way help us to synthesize the problem and therefore expanding our number of papers. If you don't like 45 papers and if you want 450 papers, yeah, instead of truck, call it vehicle. Just an example. So basically the idea is to take a step back and look at a larger problem or larger domain. Same problem, larger domain actually.
So I'm getting more and more focused questions, but I think this as a good sign because the audience captures our intention of having these talks like focused and more deep. So let me first read out one. I would say this is a case, and then I'll reframe it. Let me read it first. Is it possible to publish a research as a pilot investigation using a small MRI dataset to explore morphological characteristics of white matter fiber bundles for the detection of Alzheimer's disease? No, wait. Unlike a conventional region of interest ROI-based methods, this approach employs a detailed individualized 3D curve analysis to capture complex structure variation in white matter. So let's consider this as a very for
I
specific.
think like Kapil, I think like Noan said we will have to ask from ChatGPT first, but we have to really have some understanding of all
So I
MRI.
think the idea is this. So basically, I think kind of so because of our discussion focusing like particularly on systematic reviews,
Yeah.
maybe the audience, some of the audience members got some ideas that we are talking about doing literature survey for literature reviews itself. Can we actually take a step back, zoom out, and actually give some insights for the inexperienced researchers we have here, why we do a literature survey? It's not just for a systematic review, right? So for this one, if this is an yes no answer, this is definitely an yes. For pilot investigation also, we need a literature survey, and for this kind of a pilot investigation, yes, you need a literature survey. So, and this is a very very authentic research even. Likewise, so can you each take like 2 minutes listing out for what kind of research products we need to do literature survey? I would say pretty much for everything.
In fact, I mean, let me just first, because in fact, we have been also careful. We were not talking about literature, like systematic literature review, or we were not even talking about literature review as an outcome, right? So
Yeah.
that was highlighted at the very beginning. Just maybe the one who's asking the question missed it, but just to reiterate, the idea we are focusing here is the literature review as part of a research methodology, a complete research, start to end. So this is somewhere in between. So it is the outcome of a literature survey or literature review here is to find research gap and to find what we can do further to improve. Yeah, right. So to improve whatever we wanted to improve, like solve a problem better. So that's the focus here. So literature survey here is identified as an intermediate step, right? So not as so that was the major discussion we had. And one of the outcomes of that intermediate step is that, okay, yeah, we also can publish the literature survey as a systematic one where it like reproduced something like the one was already highlighting, or even ad hoc or rogue, couple as you called it, type of a literature review, where you can you can, I mean, it is something useful for somebody else working on a similar area, so they don't have to spend the same amount of time going through it again. So you are doing it for finding a gap and going forward while you are doing it. Okay, if you can put it out there so others can also use it, that's the whole idea of publishing it. But the main focus is not about doing and publishing a review paper, whether it is being systematic or not.
No answer.
Yeah, I also agree with. I mean, I guess the main discussion here is to produce research outputs which are more research intensive. But usually a starting point usually would be the best way is to find an existing survey paper or a systematic review done in that particular area. But going in line with the series of this particular webinars that we are having, I would say I'm fairly okay using someone using an AI tool just for the sake of figuring out what's out there, like, not publishing it. Maybe you can use an appropriate AI tool. Even you can use ChatGPT. You can connect ChatGPT with consensus, like there's a custom GPT, and that will have access to various research papers. And then you can say, can you do a systematic or something like, it doesn't have to be systematic, just a survey in this particular area so that I can get an understanding of the field. So then, through that, you can generate a document that is for your own reading. just to get a sense of what's happening out there. And then, of course, you can go into depth and then go into the specific papers that we want to formulate at the end of the literature review, the research question that we want to develop. So I think here we are focusing on developing the research question out of the literature review.
Okay, so then we have another question. This is about the time scale. So the question, I'll first read it out. Can you explain about the effects to the research duration in the new AI era? Like good research should take some time, but with this AI advancements, how much time do you think a good research should take? So let me add something that I have in mind for this one as well. So basically I think in the previous questions also. We all were like actually thinking what are legitimate research. So journal papers, conference papers, abstracts, review articles, technical articles, likewise, book chapters, likewise. And then we have these websites and all the other things which are not peer reviewed, kind of. The thing is, so the peer review would take some time. And I mean, if you find something, it'll take even more than 1 year to publish legitimately going through this traditional pipeline. So, the thing is, yeah, AI makes knowledge discovery or knowledge creation much, much faster, but our traditional research publication pipelines are not updated. In this kind of a situation, so basically in the new AI era, how are currently the research timelines have changed, and in the future, for a healthy research environment, how do you anticipate these timelines or these pipelines or architectures should change?
Yeah, so currently none of the degrees have changed. Project durations have not changed even because of AI. But what I want to highlight, I mean, this is a valid question because now we feel that people are able to produce more things. But currently, all the peer reviews are done in the traditional way. I don't think there's a peer review process where AI is used at all that is adopted in any of the conferences or any of the journals. So this AI development is ongoing, so I cannot talk about the future. Currently, what we are looking at is like when we talk about research, we are looking at AI helping the researcher to conduct the research. So the duration remains the same. So I'll tell you where we can use AI. Now, for example, you have a huge amount of research papers which are published every day. I think if you look at archive, if you take only AI papers, there are about 200 to 300 papers which are published daily. No human can go through all of those and get a sense of what is out there. So this is where I think AI is useful for us to filter and extract things that are important for whatever specific point that you're looking at. I think that is where AI will be useful. So I understand that discovering papers can be faster. Maybe writing to some extent can be helped a little bit, like grammar and all that can be checked quicker. But the remaining part of the research cycle still remains the same because there are some enhancements that I can see. Like, for example, if the research involves developing prototypes, maybe some prototype product or software, some algorithm, maybe AI can help in that process, which a human is in the loop. But to do all of these things, the human is the person who is doing the research, which currently no journal publication or no conference paper accepts a large language model to be a co-author. So it means that the human is totally responsible for the research output. So as I have been saying all the time, there is a limit in the human brain for us to absorb stuff into the brain and learn a certain thing. So because of that, we cannot expedite that further. I mean, we can help us to understand a large volume of content and then understand concepts, but still once we have understood something and then figured out what the research gap is, that other process of formulating your solution still remains, and that is going to take some time. I don't know, that's my thought. Maybe in the future things might change where we have AI peer review accepted, but I don't know. Right now it's not there, right?
So interesting. Yeah, so I agree with all Nuan said, and I just to add a couple of things. One is the general question that was asked. How I would say, even there was a paper published by OpenAI last year, early last year, and that paper was on the genuine perspective of about 20,000 students on ChatGPT use, right? So genuine feedback they call it, and I don't know how they got it. I think that it's in some survey or whatever way. I don't know. Like I didn't go into all those details, but the paper says they are using students are using AI for brainstorming, research assistant, writing, blah blah blah, and then they also have tabulated sort of for each one of these areas what sort of acceleration they see from a student's perspective. The numbers are between 1.5 and 2.9 or something, if I remember right, less than 3 times acceleration, right? So genuine use, but I also sort of agree, places where we can use AI to the best is about 3 times, less than 3 times max. Genuine. So if you take a full literature review, there are not everything that you can do with AI. So we already discussed it, right? So there are things that we can do with AI, discovery, there are part that we can do with AI, and there are things that we can't. And also all and every one of these parts, we'll have to have the human in the loop, like Nuan said, and also betting, making sure that, yeah, this is right and this makes sense, that we still have to do. And therefore, I think it's about two times, 3 times is the best, 3 times the best, but so if you take everything together, it's not 3, right? So 3 is only specific certain parts. So it may be like 1.5, 2 times. So, but like again, I agree with Nuan. So none of the degrees we have so far changed. Even research degrees, complete research, we have not changed the time duration, and we expect more to be done. Like even now, projects, what is okay. So
Motivation.
we
So
now
maybe
can.
universities might ask more research papers to be published to get the
Yeah,
degree.
so that is what we are expecting so far. We are not in a position right now so far to go beyond. So that's one side of it. So it's like 1 point. I would say for a complete research, maybe we can do 1 time or 2 times more work, right? So
And I think the other thing, Roshan, is like now I think the audience are students. They are not they
yeah,
are getting into research. They are not
yeah,
experienced
yeah,
researchers.
yeah,
I think the story could be different for top
yeah.
researchers. They may be using this in a different way because they know about research and they are
Uh,
well versed in the domain that they are in. Now
uh,
students are learning and they are still figuring out everything. They're learning about research methodology. That takes a little bit of time. But if you are an experienced super researcher, maybe that's going to help you much
Yeah,
more.
that may be
Uh,
different. And researchers who are writing book chapters, like Kapila, you're saying, so that's maybe a different set of requirement, and we haven't gone into those details at that level because we are mostly targeting on students. The next question, so the next part of the question actually, what Kapila you asked is about whether the research process itself is accelerated. I mean, not the research, the publication process itself
Yeah.
is accelerated.
Should,
So that's
is or should be.
in fact, I was in an opinion that it will not get up accelerated, but recently, actually, like last week, I read a paper on so these people who are doing the ICLR conference. ICLR is one of the top AI conferences. Even in the Google conference journal ranking, they are within top 10, maybe 8 or somewhere. So it's just next to Nature Communication somewhere there in terms of Google ranking of Google ranking is based on H index. So ICLR is somewhere at the top. So ICLR receives about 5,000 odd papers, if I'm right, or even more. And they publish a very few, maybe few hundreds. So they have this time tried out AI reviewer parallel to so there's an article or something somewhere I found somewhere, maybe I can share it with everyone. So I was going to write about it a bit somewhere, like I couldn't find time to do it, but I read so what they have done is they have put one AI reviewer and then there are usual 3 reviewers, and they have done a
mm.
correlation analysis to figure out whether the AI reviewer is doing well. In fact, the findings is that AI reviewer is pretty good. So the point is we had to not should be carried away by what I said now. It doesn't mean like all of you, if you are getting a paper to review, give it to AI to review it. So almost all the journals and conferences are against AI reviews. Multiple reasons. The first reason is you are going to, like, if you are using a free tool or you are going to leak all the confidentiality by giving this paper to review by AI. So what this ICLR team has done is they have built their own AI tool. So it's all inbuilt. It's closed. So it's not using anything from outside, and then they have given all these papers for that tool to review.
So there's this other interesting question. After writing a paper, which AI tools could be used to justify the paper? Like, as an example, which sections need more focus or which sections need to be expanded? Now, that is a fresh perspective, and I think that is a good question.
So that's not just about the literature review, right? In general. Okay, so I mean, no one might have some specific tools in mind, but what I'm saying is there are even like we were talking about ChatGPT's GPTs, like no one mentioned about consensus. I see there are a number of other popular now popping up, proper like paper, sort of looking at a work and deciding what is missing. A book, whether it's like a chapter, whether it's the coherency, the connections, things where what are missing somewhere, that sort of a thing. Like what a supervisor will normally do, give to as a feedback to somebody who is right, like a student, for example. So that supervisor type of tools are popping up. In fact, like I'm using some of them. Uh, being supervisor, so to make my life easier. But yeah, so those things are popping up, and so they are specifically built for such work. So I mean, to check the coherency and whether there are anything missing, whether the results are properly explained, and whether they are discussed, things are discussed properly. And so the research has a number of laws. In fact, like we are going to go through the whole research process, and this sort of what you asked will be covered later. But yeah, one.
Yeah, I think I also there are a lot of tools that are out there. One other thing that I just want to share is like you all talk about free tools and paid tools. The one thing that is common across all free tools is like they will use whatever the company will use our inputs and outputs for their next models training. However, there's a small clause that says if you are buying their paid tool, they are not going to do that. I'm not sure how true that is. At least that is printed in fine print. So if it's your own work and you have I'm not saying you have to buy these tools, but as Roshan mentioned, like if you just use an open tool which is free, they will definitely use that for training. That's why we don't use it for what we call when we want to review a paper. That's why we don't use these tools. We are not encouraged to use. But if you have, the other thing is like recently, but these are more computing. So if you take some of the newer open models like Gemma, you can run it on a computer if you have a fairly good computer. So you can have local models running. Then that problem is no longer an issue. And I think Gemma is a good model by Google, which you can do a little bit of work and you don't have to worry too much about it being publicly set off the documents that you use.
I think this is actually, I'm asking this question, I would say, based on some, I mean, I think even in this forum, we discussed this, previously, I think a systematic review or any kind of a review was an asset for the community because somebody has done all the hard work and we just have to read those, 8 pages or something. But as Roshan sir also mentioned, and as even in some previous sessions, we discussed briefly systematic reviews or this kind of recomposition of knowledge is not accepted as original work anymore in some fields, just like, computer science. And I think I have seen, in some places in my field, physics, in nuclear and high energy physics. And so there are these kind of websites that would dynamically do the review. Whatever the new paper published, it's kind of distilled and connected to the knowledge base. So it is like nobody's claiming the authorship or something. It's like dynamically happening. But this is one end of the spectrum, right? We are basically talking about, this code intensive or algorithm intensive things that if something goes wrong, the entire thing breaks. So we can easily vet whether something claimed is right or wrong. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have this medical research and all. So if I put it in a tangible context, my question actually is, can we remove or can we just disregard the originality of systematic reviews altogether in the entire, human knowledge? Or there might still be places, like one example is like medical research or something, where the AI generated content, AI generated good content, I would say, can still wouldn't still be able to outperform the rigor of the human intervened systematic reviews. Do we have a future for systematic reviews, at least in niche fields? That is my question.
So my answer, I mean, the computer science field, we have stopped it not because it's not useful. We have stopped it because of the overwhelming number of these things are coming and the burden of that's my feeling. Like the bird, that's what I know. So the burden of it has become so easy, and so many of them are coming because like if you want to publish them, we'll have to do peer review. Right. So we mentioned it earlier, right? So the burden of peer review has increased, and that is the reason, not because systematic reviews are useless, right? Or so that's not the reason. So I still, so you had two part of the question. One is whether it's useful. The other part is whether it has value for long run. I think both are yes, but we have sort of had a stopgap. Hopefully, we'll figure out a way to come back uh, and have them as useful. That's just my opinion. Is
Okay, I think
And
no answer.
yeah. So, I mean, maybe Roshan, one of these AI reviewers can be there and they can review the systematic reviews, and then there'll be journals who can publish those.
yeah.
That's one way to go forward. And the other thing is like, I mean, if this is happening for computing, the other question was whether this can be done for niche areas. So if you take computing, the main idea of doing a literature review, systematic literature review is same across all fields. So, I mean, if you have a good tool that can do computing, systematic literature review, then these tools can do for any other field as well. So, I don't think there'll be a niche area where this will be accepted, but there can be specific journals which continue to accept systematic reviews in specific areas because they are not overwhelmed. There are not many people trying out these things, so that's why they don't have an issue.
Until it becomes an issue.
Yes.
What are the
So
tool you're setting up? So we had to introduce this tool to all the researchers.
and kill systematic reviews for good.
Oh, good.
So in the interest of time, let me shoot the final question. So I'm going to distill this question out of a burning question I had and several little questions I got from like 3 or 4 audience members. And also I'm going to put it as an extension to what Professor Nuan actually mentioned. You said like at least for these overwhelming systematic reviews, we could assign AI reviewers. So AI chat. So lots of people actually asked, or basically expressed a negative opinion on having AI reviewers. Would it be harmful for the community? And is it like degrading the scientific rigor and everything? So I would like to put this as a question in a positive perspective. So what we can see is like these are kind of conversations between AI and AI. I would not say AI agent to AI agent communications yet, but these are some, AI generates content and AI is actually validating those content. So the last question is actually, would it be advisable or would it be actually beneficial for us as flesh and bone human to be actually kind of passive observers in some of these AI to AI scientific conversations and actually extract something useful?
Oh,
I didn't get. So let me put it this way now. If you look at the context, so whether AI is good or bad is I think a different question, and I think the world is going. It looks like everyone is trying to use AI for everything, right? I mean that's the direction we are going. Whether it's the ethics of it is kind of taking a back seat at times. So talking about the AI reviewer in terms of what it does, we use AI as a tool for all our processes. Like if you take your Word document or Google Doc, you have the assistant to help you with what you want, and there are many other tools that do that. So maybe, but you are in control. Like, I mean, that's at least what we say. Like you're responsible for the output that comes. So maybe in the future, I don't know what direction that AI reviewer will go, Roshan, but maybe there can be a scenario where you have a AI reviewer assistant that will assist the peer reviewer, but still the reviewer is in control.
And take the full accountability.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's true. I mean, my view is also similar.
We can do the hard work, right? You can go and extract the stuff and then say, these are the problems you have to look at, and then the human goes and looks at it. I don't know, like some.
Because we have, I mean, this whole series is on how AI can be used for doing research methods. So if you think rigorous peer review is also part of it, right now we are not, generally the publishers are not allowing, and therefore we are also not recommending, is because of this reason, the confidentiality reason, right? So the papers, what you put on, if you are not careful enough, things can get leaked. But so on the other hand, if AI can support reviewing the same way how it can support do literature review, right? So if AI can support reviewing, obviously I think I'll go for it, right? So so that's one question. The other question, Kabila, you asked is like long looking, or the far-fetched question. The sort of question is whether what if let AI to do research and AI to review and so on, in that process, can we get something out of it useful? I think there are specialized areas where such things are being done, and you might already know, right? So there are specific research topics, not like a large language model solve all problems in the world type of thing, but on specific areas, we have shown that AI can do better than people, right? So for various reasons, so they don't have to sleep, eat, and blah blah. That is one reason. The other reason is, so we have our limits and so on. And specialized areas, there's enough shown. Even like the very famous last year, so the AlphaFold type of examples, and there's more of them recently we are seeing in research. So specific research area or specific problem, can we build a specific tool for solving it, or AI working on it and AI reviewing it? It's not like AI reviewing, publishing papers and so on. It's like a specific research, right? I'm talking about a specific research where the research is done by, or the problem is solved by AI, and AI review it and it keeps on trying. Can that process help us do things better in certain application? We see that already happening, right? So that I think is something that's already happening. But overall, can AI come and do all research in the world, like large language model, talking to everybody, anything? That I still will make a mess of everything. So I don't think we'll go there, and that's not going to happen. And if we go there, we are going to be in big trouble. But yeah, specific ones, yes, definitely yes.
So all in all, I think you both put up the statement that human in the driving seat to date, and AI can be a very effective assistant. I think that is the
Yes.
gist of the day. So in the interest of time, to conclude the session, actually there were several questions asking about the next few sessions. I would invite Roshan sir to actually give the concluding remarks and also extend the discussion. Since we have already planned the next two sessions, give the audience a heads up on what they can expect in the next coming month or month and a half. So what do you?
So, thank you, Kapila. Let me just quickly summarize what we had discussed today. Like I said, today what we discussed is on literature review in general, not specifically targeting literature review as a publication. So literature review is going beyond finding papers, summarizing them, but also synthesizing and putting things together and also to find what we can do next, finding gaps. So in every step of the way, we have been highlighting, actually, Nuwan has shown a number of interesting tools and useful tools. We know that we had taken examples from an area that we are more familiar with, but I hope this participants who are coming from all different disciplines understand that these tools utility, not just the problem you are trying to solve, because you can use the same tools to solve your own problem. The same way how instead of putting this research question, put your research question. That's what it is. The rest of it, the tools are very generic and they are not research area specific. And therefore, that is a key message. All the tools that we discussed are generic. They are not specifically for computer science or anything. So therefore, feel free to use these tools. And we have shown how these tools can be used for discovery, organizing things, summarizing, clarifying doubts, and the different type of tools which are RAG based, where we can also give some content and get output and so on, and also how we can go beyond synthesize and also find research gaps. So that's what we have discussed today. And like Kapila was saying, we have already planned for the next two episodes, and we'll be announcing them soon, and hopefully we'll do that in 2 weeks interval. The immediate one that is coming up is starting from the research gap we identified. How do you properly formulate research questions that can be validated? So these research questions are the ones that are going to be taken forward to do research. So research question formulation, how we can use AI tools, even without AI tools, what it means and how we can use AI tools. That's so the key point about this discussion we wanted to keep on highlighting is that this is not about, okay, now there's AI, how do we do research? But we have been doing research and what it is, and then how AI can come in and make it better. Even today's discussion, we started by what literature review is, what are the gaps, what are the problems students face, and then how we can use AI tools to make it faster or better. So the same discussion will continue for research questions. And then in the following episode, we are going to talk about one of the key areas, which is about data. How do you collect and curate data? How do you collect data sets? How do you collect data basically from any research problem? Now, data is the key. In fact, like I personally believe data is the key across all different type of research that we do, be it social science research to computer science research to any other research. Yes, there are places where we build systems, but still they hard to process data, right? So data is part of any research. So we'll be bringing some experts who have done a decent amount of data collection, curation, how we can put data together. And particularly as a country, we are lacking in having our own data, so data is basically a representation of our problems, right? So and therefore we'll have to come up with our own data. So I'm like excited about the next two sessions. Research question formulation, data set curation are the next two episodes to come up. And yeah, so that's all I had to say. And I'd like to conclude by thanking Nuwan again for joining and sharing the insights and sharing a lot of interesting tools. I learned a few new tools today, so I'll try them out as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Roshan and Kapila, for having me.
Yeah. So I think it's an end of a wonderful session. Actually, I really liked how Nuance started by actually, how to formulate keywords, and then actually how to use the logical operators and actually create a query and do it as how a computer or LLM backend would do or something like that. So I think it was a very educational perspective. I know it is coming from the computer education side, semantic computing side, and actually you seamlessly connected it to the problem we had or the objective of the day. So it was a very, I think as an educator also, I learned a thing or two about how to teach from Nuance. So thank you, Nuance, for all the thoughts you have put to streamline this session. And I think it was very well aligned and productive. It was wonderful, actually. And Roshan sir, as always, I have to thank you for taking these 2 hour slots every fortnightly for us while doing all the other busy work you have to do. and also effective work. So I think it's time for us to say goodbye to everybody and see you in 2 weeks' time in a very productive, another productive session. Noan sir, thank you very much for your time and
Thank you
insights
very much. Yeah.
again. And Roshan sir, thank you as always. So gonna end the session. Good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
Kamal.
night.
Night. Good night.
Thank